I never thought silence could be this loud. Some nights, it sits beside me like an old friend. I don't remember inviting Doc. My name is Robert. I'm 79 years old. I've lived a long life, a busy life, a life that looked successful from the outside. And now, in the quiet years, I've realized something that hurts more than any failure I ever faced. I'm sharing this because I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. By the end of this story, you'll understand why time is the most expensive thing you'll ever spend, and why the people you think will always be there may not wait forever. Asterisk, when you reach my age, time stops behaving the way it used to. It no longer rushes past you in a blur of deadlines and calendars. Instead, it slows down. It stretches. It leaves room for memories to walk back in without knocking. Some memories arrive gently. Others come in heavy, dragging regret behind them. Like a shadow you can't outrun. I used to believe I was doing everything right. I worked hard. I provided. I showed up when it mattered, or at least when I thought it mattered. I built a career that paid the bills, kept a roof over our heads, and earned nods of respect from people who barely knew me. Back then, success had a very clear definition. You worked, you earned, you saved, you planned. And someday you'd rest. I told myself there would be time later. Later became my favorite word. I used it the way some people use prayer. Later, when things slow down. Later, when work isn't so demanding. Later, when I retire. Later, when the kids are older and the grandkids can really remember me. What I didn't understand was that later is a fragile promise. It breaks easily. And it doesn't tell you when it's about to disappear. The first grandchild was born when I was in my late 50s. I remember holding that tiny body in my arms, feeling something crack open inside my chest, a warmth I wasn't prepared for, a kind of love that felt softer than fatherhood, but somehow deeper. I promised myself I'd be present. I promised I wouldn't repeat the mistakes I made when my own kids were young. But promises are easy to make in moments like that. It's the quiet Tuesdays that test them. Life didn't slow down. It sped up. Work pulled me back in. Responsibilities stacked up. I told myself I was still young enough to make up for lost time later. When my daughter asked if I could watch the kids for a weekend, I checked my schedule first. When my grandson had a school play, I told myself there would be another. One? When my granddaughter wanted me to read her the same book for the 5th time, I smiled and said maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow became another word that betrayed me. The years passed in small, forgettable ways. Birthdays blended together. Holidays came and went. I showed up sometimes, stayed briefly, left early. I brought gifts instead of presents, toys instead of attention, money instead of memories. And everyone told me I was a good grandfather, reliable, generous, kind. No one told me I was distant. No one complained. Children rarely do. They just adjust. They learn who has time for them and who doesn't. They learn which adults linger and which ones are always halfway out the door. I didn't notice the shift at first. The way hugs became shorter. The way conversations stayed shallow. The way they stopped asking me to come outside and play. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. Interests change. I believed the story that made me feel least guilty. Then one day, I realized they were growing up without me. It hit me during a family gathering I almost skipped. I stood in the corner of the room, watching my grandkids laugh together, sharing inside jokes I didn't understand. They were taller than I remembered, their voices deeper, their faces more defined. I realized I didn't know who they were becoming. I knew their names, their ages, their favorite sports. But I didn't know their fears, their dreams, the things that kept them awake at night That I had missed the small moments that build trust. The moments where children decide whether you're someone they can open up to. Those moments don't announce themselves. They slip by quietly while you're checking your phone or thinking about tomorrow. That I told myself I still had time to fix it. I was only in my 70s. Plenty of energy left. Plenty of chances. I'd make more effort. I'd call more. I'd show up more often. I'd be the grandfather I imagined myself being. But time had already started collecting its debt. The phone rang less. Invitations became more formal, planned, less spontaneous. My grandkids didn't run to me anymore. They smiled politely, respectfully, like you smile at someone you know you're supposed to care about, but don't quite know how. That's when the ache started. A slow, steady pain that settled into my chest. Not sharp enough to demand attention, but constant enough to never let me forget. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being dramatic, that this was just part of aging. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I had promised my youngest grandson I'd come watch him play baseball. He was so excited when he told me. His eyes lit up the way only children's eyes do when they believe something good is about to happen. I checked my calendar. Busy, but manageable. I told him I'd be there. That morning, a work call ran long. I told myself I'd still make it if I hurried. Then traffic slowed. Then I realized I'd missed the first inning. I debated turning around. I told myself he wouldn't notice. Kids are distracted. He'd understand. When I finally arrived, the game was almost over. I spotted him in the outfield. He wasn't looking toward the stands anymore. He was focused, serious, older than I remembered. When the game ended, I waved. He waved back. No smile, no run, no excitement. Later that night, my daughter called. Her voice was calm, but tired. He kept looking for you, she said. I told him you were busy. Busy. That word felt heavier than it ever had before. I hung up the phone and sat alone in my car long after the engine went cold. For the first time, I wondered if my presence had already been replaced by absence. If the space I was supposed to fill had quietly closed itself. I didn't know then that this wasn't the moment I needed to worry about most, because the real wake-up call hadn't happened yet. The real wake-up call didn't come with shouting or tears. It came quietly, the way most life-changing moments do. It came on a Tuesday afternoon I almost forgot entirely. My daughter called and asked if I could watch the kids for a few hours, because she had an unexpected appointment. I looked at my watch and my calendar, at the neat little boxes I'd filled with obligations that suddenly felt meaningless. For once, I didn't hesitate. I said yes before my mind could talk me out of it. They arrived with backpacks and half-finished stories. I noticed how much they'd grown just since the last holiday. My granddaughter had braces. My grandson's voice cracked when he spoke. They sat on the couch, polite, unsure, waiting for instructions like guests instead of family. That hurt more than I expected. I realized I'd trained them to expect distance from me, not warmth. We started slow. Snacks, small talk, a board game. I barely remembered how to play. At first, it felt awkward, like reconnecting with someone you used to know, but lost touch with. There were silences I didn't know how to fill. I resisted the urge to check my phone, to escape into distraction. I stayed present, even when it felt uncomfortable. Then something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. My grandson laughed at something silly I said. My granddaughter leaned closer to show me a drawing she'd been working on. They began, talking over each other, forgetting to filter themselves. That's when I realized how fragile connection is, and how quickly it can return if you make room for it. That afternoon stretched into evening. We cooked dinner together, or at least attempted to. The kitchen was a mess. Sauce on the counter, laughter in the air. I felt something loosen inside me, like a knot I'd been carrying for years was finally being untied. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about later. I wasn't planning or postponing. I was just there. When my daughter came to pick them up, she paused at the door. She looked at the scene in front of her and smiled in a way that told me she'd noticed the change. After they left, the house felt emptier than usual, but also warmer. That night, I didn't feel the familiar ache. I felt hope, but hope alone doesn't erase regret. It doesn't rewind time. In the weeks that followed, memories came back stronger than ever. Moments I'd skipped, invitations I'd declined, chances I'd postponed. I allowed myself to feel the grief of those losses instead of pushing them away. I learned that regret doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It grows quieter, sharper, more patient. I started showing up differently. I attended games even when I felt tired. I listened without interrupting. I asked questions and waited for the answers. I learned their world instead of expecting them to enter mine. Slowly, trust rebuilt itself, not completely. Some doors, once closed, only opened partway again. I had to accept that. One evening, my grandson asked if I'd come to his graduation when the time came. Not as an obligation, as a question. I said yes, and this time, I meant it with a certainty that scared me. Because certainty means responsibility. It means there's no room for excuses anymore. I began to understand something I wish I'd known. Decades earlier, children don't measure love in years. They measure it in moments. They remember who sat on the floor with them, who looked up when they spoke, who stayed even when there was something else to do. They remember presence, not promises. As I aged, my body slowed, but my awareness sharpened. I noticed how quickly seasons passed, how fast children became adults, how easily time slipped through my fingers when I treated it casually. I realized money had given me comfort, but time would have given me meaning. One afternoon, my granddaughter asked me why I always seemed sad before. The question caught me off guard. I thought about lying. I thought about simplifying it. Instead, I told her the truth. I told her I'd been busy being important somewhere else. I told her I thought I had more time. She listened quietly then, hugged me, not the polite kind, the kind that lingers. That moment didn't erase my mistakes, but it softened them. It reminded me that healing doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. Now, at 79, my days are quieter. My schedule is lighter. The world doesn't demand as much from me anymore. And I finally understand that this is a gift, not a loss. I use my time differently now. I guard it. I spend it where it matters most. I still feel regret. I probably always will, but regret no longer owns me. It guides me. It reminds me what's worth protecting. It keeps me present. If you're listening to this and thinking about the people you love, don't wait. Don't assume there will be a better time. Don't trade moments for maybes. Sit with them. Listen to them. Be there, fully, imperfectly. Honestly, because one day, you'll sit in a quiet room and realize that time was never something you had. It was something you were borrowing, and the interest is paid in memories.